It's a strange thing to think about. We are here. You are reading this. I am writing it. And that's it. Just us. Homo sapiens. But it wasn't always like this. For a very long time, our family tree was crowded. There were many kinds of humans walking around on Earth, not just us. And then, one by one, they disappeared. Only we remained. Why? That's a really big question, and it doesn't have a simple answer. Imagine looking back in time, not just a few hundred years, but tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years. The world then was full of different human species. You had Neanderthals in Europe and parts of Asia. They were strong, stocky, and smart in their own way. Further east in Asia were Denisovans. We don't know as much about them, but we know they were distinct. And way before them, for a long time, Homo erectus had spread across the world. They were around for maybe 2 million years. That's a huge span of time. They made tools and knew how to use fire. Then there were the hobbits on an island called Flores, Homo floresiensis. They were tiny, maybe due to island dwarfism. And even more recently, we found Homo naledi in a cave system in South Africa. They had small brains but seemed to do some complex things, so many human forms. And now just one, us. For a long time, people thought we were just smarter, that our brains were simply better. And that's part of it. Our brains are special. They are good at a lot of things. But it's not just about brain size. Neanderthals had brains just as big, sometimes bigger than ours. Their brains might have been wired differently. Maybe they focused more on things like vision and body control, which makes sense for people living in cold, harsh environments. But our brains seem to excel at something else: abstract thought. We could imagine things that weren't right in front of us. We could plan far ahead. We could think in symbols. And this ability to think abstractly, to connect ideas that seem unrelated, that's a big deal. It let us do things no one else could. Think about language. We have very complex language. We can talk about the past. We can talk about the future. We can share detailed information. Teach our kids complicated skills. We can warn people about dangers they haven't seen yet. And we can gossip. That might sound silly, but gossip is a powerful tool for social bonding and understanding who is trustworthy in a large group. Imagine trying to explain how to build a complex trap, or how to treat an illness, or the best route to find seasonal berries without detailed language. It would be much harder. Our language let us build on knowledge. It let us share innovations. It created a collective memory. It meant that one person's discovery could become everyone's knowledge and be passed down through generations. This created a huge advantage. Other hominins likely had some form of communication, but it probably wasn't as rich, as flexible, or as capable of conveying complex ideas as ours. And because of this language, our social groups changed. We could form bigger groups, and these groups were more connected. We could coordinate much better. Imagine a big hunt for a large animal. It needs many people, working together with a clear plan. Someone drives the animal, someone ambushes it, someone creates a distraction. This level of cooperation, especially in large numbers, is a hallmark of Homo sapiens. We could trust people we weren't related to, or people we didn't know intimately, because language and shared culture helped build that trust. We could divide labor more effectively. Some people gather, some hunt, some make tools, some watch the children. This specialization makes a group much more efficient. It also means if one person fails at their task, the whole group doesn't starve. Other hominins probably lived in smaller, more family-centric groups. That's good for tight bonds, but maybe not for facing large-scale challenges or adapting quickly to new problems. Our knack for innovation also set us apart. We made tools, but so did other hominins. What was different about our tools? They often showed more creativity. They were more varied. We didn't just make stone hand axes for hundreds of thousands of years like Homo erectus often did. We made different tools for different jobs. Projectile weapons like spears, and later, bows and arrows. Clothing to keep warm. Shelters, not just natural caves, but built structures. We adapted our environment to us, not just adapting ourselves to the environment. This meant we could move into new places, even really tough places, and make them livable. We could fish the rivers, hunt the forests, gather from the plains. Our technology wasn't just about survival, it was about thriving and expanding. And this ability to thrive, it speaks to our incredible adaptability. We are generalists, meaning we aren't tied to one specific environment or one specific food source. Neanderthals, for example, were very good at living in cold glacial environments. They were specialized hunters of big game, but when the climate changed, when the big game animals started to dwindle or move, they faced a big challenge. We, Homo sapiens, ate everything. We fished. We hunted small animals. We gathered plants. If one food source disappeared, we found another. If one environment became too harsh, we learned new ways to cope, or we moved on. We could live in the freezing north, the scorching desert, the humid rainforest. This flexibility, this unwillingness to be pigeonholed by our environment, meant we could survive changes that might have wiped out more specialized groups. Our reproductive strategy also played a role. We seem to have reproduced a bit faster than some other hominins like Neanderthals. And our children matured a bit differently. Human children for a long time are very helpless. They need a lot of care. But this extended childhood means more time for learning, more time to absorb all that complex language and culture. And maybe in our groups, the survival rate of our young was a little better. Even small differences in birth rates or child survival rates over thousands of years can lead to huge differences in population size. A slightly larger population is more resilient. It has more genetic diversity. It has more individuals to come up with new ideas. It can absorb losses from disease or famine better. It means there are more people to spread out, to explore, to colonize new lands. And spread out we did. Homo sapiens originated in Africa, and then we began to move. We walked out of Africa in waves, slowly at first, and then more quickly. We went to Asia. We went to Europe. We crossed land bridges that are now underwater. We even made it to Australia, which required sea travel. This incredible drive to explore, to see what was over the next hill, that's a very human trait. And as we spread, we encountered other human species. We didn't always replace them peacefully. And sometimes there was competition for resources, for hunting grounds, for fertile land. We might have had an advantage in numbers. We might have had an advantage in our tools. We might have had an advantage in our coordinated hunting strategies. Climate change, big shifts in the world's weather, these were constant pressures for all hominins. The ice ages, periods of extreme cold, came and went, and these changes hit everyone hard. But, again, our adaptability might have given us an edge. If a glacier advanced, we could move. If a forest turned into a grassland, we could learn new ways to hunt and gather in the grassland. If the big mammoths and woolly rhinos started to disappear, we could switch to smaller game or fishing, or focusing more on plants. For groups like Neanderthals, who were often tied to specific large game animals in specific environments, these shifts could be devastating. They were very good at what they did, but perhaps not good enough at changing what they did when the world itself changed around them. So, when Homo sapiens met other groups, like the Neanderthals, it wasn't necessarily a direct fight that we won every time. Though conflicts surely happened, it was probably more like a slow, steady demographic shift. We might have just outcompeted them for resources over a long time. We might have just absorbed them through interbreeding. We know now that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, and Denisovans too, did interbreed. Most people of non-African descent today have a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA in them. So, they didn't just vanish, they became a part of us in a way, but their distinct populations faded. Our numbers grew, and theirs shrank, until they were gone as separate groups. It's tempting to look for one big reason, one killer app that we had, but that's not how evolution works. It's never one thing. It's a whole package of traits that, when put together, give an organism a slight edge. Think of it like a deck of cards. We might have had a few more aces, a few more kings, a slightly better hand overall. Our complex language, our abstract thought, our flexible technology, our broad diet, our cooperative social structure, our ability to rapidly adapt, our tendency to migrate and explore, and perhaps our reproductive success, these all combined. They created a synergy. Each trait made the other stronger. Our ability to think abstractly led to complex language. Complex language led to better cooperation. Better cooperation led to more effective tools and hunting strategies. More effective strategies led to larger populations. Larger populations led to more innovation and more spread. It was a positive feedback loop. And we can't forget a bit of luck. The world is a wild and unpredictable place. Maybe a disease hit one group harder than another. Maybe a series of harsh winters had a bigger impact on a less adaptable population. Maybe a volcano erupted in a critical area for one species, but not for ours. Chance plays a role in everything, even evolution. It's not just about who is best, but also who is luckiest when times get tough. We survived, in part, because we were good at bouncing back from bad luck, or because we weren't in the wrong place at the wrong time quite as often as others. Take the Neanderthals again as a deeper example. They lived in Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. They survived many glacial cycles. They were incredibly tough. They cared for their sick and injured. They buried their dead, they used tools, they controlled fire, they were not primitive brutes. But perhaps their strategies were a bit too rigid. Their physical build, suited for cold climates, might have been less efficient in warmer periods. Their hunting style, often close quarters with large animals, was dangerous and required a lot of energy. Their population numbers always seem to have been relatively small. When Homo sapiens moved into their territory with our larger numbers, our varied toolkits, and our more flexible hunting and gathering strategies, the pressure on Neanderthals increased. It was like two companies in the same market. One had slightly better product diversification, a more adaptable workforce, and a larger customer base. Over time, the smaller, more specialized company couldn't keep up. The other human species, like Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, or Homo naledi, they were either much older branches that died out long before Homo sapiens was even fully formed, or they were isolated populations that were already vulnerable. Homo erectus had an amazing run, but they were eventually replaced by more advanced hominins, including early Homo sapiens in some areas. Homo floresiensis, the hobbits, were stuck on an island. They adapted to that island life, but a very small, isolated population is always at risk from disease, natural disaster, or new predators, including us. Homo naledi seems to have survived late, but in a very specific cave system, suggesting a highly localized existence. They simply weren't built for global expansion. So we stand alone today. We're the last human species. It's not because we were necessarily superior in every single way. It's because we had a combination of traits that, when put together, gave us a decisive edge in a world that was constantly changing. Our ability to think, to talk, to build, to adapt, to cooperate, to reproduce, and to explore these things, working together, made us incredibly resilient. It was a long, slow process, not a sudden event, and it's a story we are still piecing together. There are still many unknowns, many debates among scientists. We learn new things all the time. But the general picture is clear. We had a winning hand, not because of one amazing card, but because all our cards worked really well together. And that's why, when you look around, you only see us.